Hello everyone and welcome to a quiet street corner of one of the battle mats we play here. We're doing something a little bit different today though. We're not doing a battle report, we're not doing an unboxing. Because so many people are stuck at home, self-isolating, under quarantine, under lockdown, pretty much most of the world is at the moment. You might not be used to that, you might be looking for distractions, so for the purposes of this video, I thought it'd be fun to kind of go through some movies, TV shows, and comics of mine that are favourites from both DC and Marvel that would take a while to get through so that you can have something to do. Also a few games mentioned at the end, but just tangentially. But a bunch of things you can read or watch that will eat up a lot of time that are available via like Amazon Video, Netflix, Disney Plus, other places like that. Some of them not all semi-legal, but you know, I leave that to you. So let's get into this and start with some films and TV. So let's start with a super obvious one, the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Over 10 years worth of films across, well, technically 3 phases. Phase 3 was split into 2, but a bunch of movies, 2-3 hours long each. All of them watchable, even the not as great ones of the series. Looking at you, Thor of a Dark World, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, not great, but watchable. Like, the worst Marvel movie is still better than a lot of actual movies. And it flows nicely, it has a wonderful ending. Yes, they're doing more, but as a collection, just this, ignoring Far From Home, I guess, because that's starting the next wave. Incredibly watchable, funny action, gets a little bit dark towards the end, but more importantly, you're looking at hours upon hours of decent entertainment. And again, because of Disney Plus now being available in most places, you'll have access to most of these movies already, if not all of them. And I think you can get some of them still on Amazon. Well, no, it'd probably be streaming on Amazon Prime or YouTube. But you can do that. I actually forgot to mention YouTube, but they do actually allow you to stream a lot of movies for a very small price. So yeah, first, very obvious one, the Cinematic Universe is good, it's worth watching, and will take up a lot of time. So let's jump over to DC and cover a few things. It's got a theme. Let's see if you can guess what it is. Let's start with this, which is the DVD box release. Although again, I think you can stream this on Amazon Video for sure. The complete television series of the 1960s Adam West Batman with Burt Ward. I recently rewatched this. Well, actually I picked this up because it was on sale in the Black Friday Amazon sale, I believe. I'd seen it before, like bits and pieces when I was a kid, but I'd never seen it from start to finish. It is a wonderful, adorable, very watchable series, just goofy, and you're looking at 2,897 minutes of content, including this. Actually, if you do manage to find this box set, has a bunch of like behind the scenes stuff about it being made, but just the series itself, if you don't mind Batman being goofy and campy, and well, it was deliberately campy, but still incredibly watchable, just great fun. So there's one. In the same vein, from the 90s, again definitely available on Amazon Video, the original 90s Batman animated series. This is a collection of all 3 seasons. The 3rd season ain't so great, but the first 2 are genuinely great. I rewatched this at Christmas for the first time since I was a kid. It holds up. As an adult, I appreciated some episodes more because they are written very well. And this is, what, 2,292 minutes of content right here. Again, super watchable, classic Batman cartoon, very, very enjoyable. So there's 2 to the theme. The 3rd, probably an obvious one again, the Dark Knight trilogy, Chris Nolan's movies. Batman Begins I like a lot. The Dark Knight is one of the best superhero vigilante movies ever. Dark Knight Rises, not so much, but that's okay. It finishes off the story well enough. Again, 3 decently length movies, 140 minutes, 153, 164. They are good. Apparently they have 7 hours of bonus content, but I haven't watched it. But if you are looking for some Batman related movie and TV suggestions, this will last you like a month on its own. Probably more than that, actually. So a couple more DC suggestions for you here. Arrow and The Flash, part of the television cinematic universe, I don't know what you want to call it, for the various DC heroes. Starting with Arrow. Arrow is as close to a modern day Batman television show you're ever going to get. In my opinion, the first few seasons are excellent. It starts to get way too comic booky and messy in the later seasons when they do a bunch of crossover episodes, and it gets a bit more outrageous. This is the box set for season 1 to 6. I believe there's 8 seasons in total, and that's the last for this particular one. I gave up like halfway through season 6 or season 5, I've forgotten now. But it is watchable. It starts really good, and as I say, it feels like Batman. It's just he fires arrows instead of shooting batarangs at people. And if you do decide to get this particular box set, remember this is not all the seasons. This is 5,678 minutes of a television show. And I believe if you're in America, you can see some of the seasons, maybe all of them, on American Netflix. It's not on UK Netflix. I'm not sure, maybe Amazon has it. I'm not sure. Such is how long this is. I haven't even got to watching The Flash yet, and this is 4 seasons. I'm not sure how many seasons there are of him yet. He's in a few crossover episodes with Arrow, so I'm familiar with him there. But just these seasons, 3,788 minutes approximately. I think they're up to season 6 now. Haven't got around to watching this. I will do it at some point, but if you are looking for something superhero related, that's more hours and minutes and whatnot right there that you can hopefully find in a service you're already subscribed to as well. Okay, I think that's it for movies, so I think we're safe to move on to some books and comics and such. So let's jump in with some DC, well, more so specifically Batman suggested comic book reading. Everything I'm going to show you here, or sorry, not everything I'm going to show you here is because it's like one of the best, most renowned stories ever, although for The Long Halloween that is an exception. Some of the things I'm going to suggest to you are simply because they're an okay read, and more importantly, they're long. So if you just slow read it, take your time, enjoy it, it'll distract you for a little while, and I think that's the main purpose of this. But to start with, there's going to be a lot of Batman suggestions, not nearly as many Marvel. Not as into the Marvel comics, I'm not as knowledgeable on them. But we have Batman The Long Halloween, one of the better whodunit stories ever conceived for Batman. Very unique style, and also very long. Very good story. Yes, if you look too far into it, there's a little bit of plot holiness depending, but that's okay. It's a great story, and you can make it a double feature if immediately after you read the follow-up, which is called Dark Victory, which also acts as an origin story for Dick Grayson in this particular timeline. Equally as long, not as good, not nearly as good, but a suitable follow-up to Long Halloween. Similar art style. Don't want to show near the end of the book to spoil things, but it's a good story. It acts like an origin story for Two-Face. It doesn't need Batman. It's more so just like a detective trying to solve a whodunit, and it's enjoyable. Dark Victory goes a little bit more into comic booky villainous, but The Long Halloween is excellent. So let's cover something Marvel next. This is actually a triple billing, or I guess a quadrilogy? Whichever, depending on what you look at. I only just recently read these 3, and they're back-to-back Captain America stories that all flow together. Starting with Captain America The Winter Soldier Ultimate Collection. If you've seen the movie The Winter Soldier, you basically know what happens in this, but it's good to set up context in the comic book storyline to know how things are compared to the movies, because the movies have not been entirely accurate to the comic books they've drawn from. But The Winter Soldier is essentially the same, more or less. Then immediately that follows by The Red Menace, which is about Crossbones, the Red Skull's daughter, what the Red Skull is doing to get revenge on Captain America. And then you can just flow straight to the next one, but it would help, and it is a good read as well, if between reading Red Menace and the thing below it, you were to slip in, which is also another long read, slip in Civil War 1. Don't touch Civil War 2 with a barge pole. It's very bad. But Civil War, the original one, it's pretty good. It's a fun read, it's got good art, heroes fighting heroes, etc, etc. It's a good read. And obviously, again, based on, the Captain America Civil War movie is based on some scenes from this. And then that immediately leads on to the massive collection, The Death of Captain America. It is huge. Captain America is barely in it, so just keep that in mind. That's why you kind of have to read this stuff first to show how you all get here. It's about the world and everybody coping with and getting revenge after he is apparently murdered. And it's a very, very long read. It's interesting. It shows the fallout from Civil War. And yeah, it's a lot of political intrigue and spies and backstabs and the redemption arc for Bucky, basically. That's Bucky on the front, that's not Captain America. So yeah, it's a very good read. Just recently read these for the first time. Not Civil War, I read that years ago, but this particular trilogy, just recently read it. Took a while to get through, and it was worth the read. So I'll be honest, the rest of the comics, graphic novels, etc., whatever you want to call them, I have left to suggest are all Batman related, because Batman is my main comic source. I'm going to pick out a few more Marvel ones I've recently read, not again because they're amazing, because I've read them recently and they're okay, but I'm going to do a couple more Batman ones first. Starting with, fairly long, the Batman Hush collection recently adapted into an animated movie, which changes the story, so even if you've seen the animated movie, the book is very different. Right down to like who Hush is, for instance. It's just entirely different in the animated movie. I didn't see it, I've seen clips from it, didn't seem that good. But it's a good story. It's a story of Batman getting injured, turning to a childhood friend. There is a pointless side story where he goes to Metropolis just to fight Superman, controlled by Poison Ivy, which is not needed at all. Then there's wonderful stuff involving the Joker there as well, where Batman almost loses his temper too much. Great art. It's a very good story of someone after revenge for Batman. Better than the animated movie in my opinion, and just a good story in general. This is kind of like a good standalone one. Like, it doesn't matter if you don't know who Huntress is. She's at the start and that's literally it. If you know the classic villains, then it's fine. If you know who Joker, Catwoman and Harley and Poison Ivy are, you don't need any other information. So next we have for you another triple set. The Batman Court of Owls trilogy. One of them's kind of an anthology, I guess, the Night of the Owls. Really the main story, if you just care about Batman dealing with the new threat as of the New 52, you just need to read Volume 1, The Court of Owls, and Volume 2, The City of Owls. That just deals with Batman. Night of the Owls is basically the greater Bat family, all dealing with Talon assassins. So, like, here's how Robin handled it, here's how Nightwing handled it, here's how Batwoman and the Birds of Prey all dealt with, like, fighting an undead, regenerating assassin. So it's a neat kind of thing. There is a rumour that the next Batman video game is going to be a Court of Owls game. So if you aren't familiar with them at all, this would be a good place to start. Basically, they're just a clandestine group of nasties that have been dictating how Gotham has proceeded over the years, and Batman is getting too big for his britches, so they go after him, essentially. First two are not super long. I think this a little longer. The anthology is, well, I don't know if anthology is the right word, but the big collection is obviously longer. It's a good story. Was recently adapted into a movie as well, but the movie again was, the animated movie that is very different to how this plays out. So it's still worth reading even if you saw that animated movie. The animated movie seemed okay from what I saw of it, but I preferred the comic book story. I know that the New 52 I don't think is super popular. I like the art, I like some of the stories, and this is one of the standout ones. So again, I'm not the biggest source on like the must-read Marvel big event stories. I've been recently trying to find some that take my interest. Based on some suggestions I got from people, I recently read 3, and just so we're not purely showing Batman stuff, here's some options from Marvel, starting with Original Sin. It's about the Watcher, the silent alien who lives on the moon and shows up to stare at heroes and villains when they are doing something of importance to the timeline. This asks what would happen if he was murdered, who did it, and it's essentially a whodunit, but with a bunch of hero fighting in between. It's not a super huge story. It is fun though, and you probably will not be expecting who it is that did the thing. Let's put it that way. Second, Age of Ultron, pretty long story, very, very little to do with the movie adaptation of Age of Ultron other than Ultron being the villain. This is essentially, he has taken over the world suddenly through methods unknown, and then Wolverine and Sue Storm come up with an unorthodox plan to turn the timeline back, ending up with causing, well, hang on, I don't want to show too many spoilers, ending up causing too many problems, messing with the timeline, making it worse in different ways, and then having to go back and fix their mistake again, because sometimes getting wiped out by Ultron isn't the worst possible future, as it turns out. It's a fun, goofy time travel story, worth reading. Fear itself is probably the best of these 3, the one I enjoyed the most. Again, quite a long read. It's essentially the tale of Odin's brother, I think they're brothers, coming back, instilling fear in humans to power him. He's like, the more scared humans are, the more powerful he becomes, and he gives out hammers to the worthy that get turned into horrible monsters, and then Thor and the humans have to fight. It's the Red Skull's daughter there becoming one of the worthy. It's very fun. It's got some great fighting. There's Juggernaut becoming one of the worthy. It's a very Thor-centric story, and it's essentially coming down to, well, I don't want to say what it's about, but I do want to show, like, you be familiar with a certain scene from it. This is the story, which is referenced in Age of Ultron. Where are we? Nope, not there. And on a card you can get for Crisis Protocol as well. Let me see here. I'm trying to find the exact page, because I don't want to spoil... there we are. Don't want to spoil too much, but this is the story in which Captain America wields Thor's hammer and fights with it. So that's pretty awesome. I don't want to do too much context for it because it builds up to that moment. It's great. That's, of the three, this is the one I enjoyed the most. So we've got part 1 and part 2 of just a silly crossover event here. We have Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, part 1 and part 2. Part 1's pretty short, part 2 is a bit longer. Part 1 was recently adapted into an animated movie, which unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your opinion, stuck super close to the source material. So if you've seen that one, there isn't much point in reading the comic because it does stay very, very true to it for the most part, although the art is much better in this as well. It's fun. It's Batman beating up the Turtles. Part 2, I didn't enjoy as much. It has Donatello being really, really insecure and he gets addicted to Venom. And let's see if I can find an example picture as I knock some of the buildings here from the table. I like Freddie Williams' art. It's Freddie Williams Jr. that is, for the most part. I hate the way he draws Bane. I hate it. I'm sorry, but I do. I can't stand it. And because Bane is the central villain of part 2, that means I have to look at him being drawn in a way I don't like way too much. But if you can get over that, part 2 is okay as well. Part 1 is much better, but if you've seen the animated movie, it's super close to it. So I was going to avoid suggesting stories on the shorter side, because then you've got your things like The Killing Joke, The Man Who Laughs, Year One, etc. But I'm just going to quickly fire off, because I just happened to have them sitting when I was looking for other comics. A few comics on the shorter side that are worth reading, but again, they're not going to take up too much time because they're pretty short. Flashpoint is a Flash Batman crossover type thing, where the Flash accidentally changes time, ends up working with Batman's father. It's a Flash story, but Batman is kind of central as well. It's fun. It recently got made into an animated movie, so again, if you've seen that, although it does play out differently, but it was fun reading. Batman White Knight is the story of what if the Joker was sane and took down Batman legally, essentially. It is a wonderful read. It's a little on the long side. I'm not super into the art style for it, but the story is wonderful. Very enjoyable. Also, Batman is slightly unhinged in it because Alfred is ill and dying. Black Mirror is my favourite story of someone else being Batman. This is Dick Grayson as Batman, kind of begrudgingly. Kind of looks at him, how he feels about following in Bruce's footsteps. Also, some other connections. There's a B story involving James Gordon, as in Commissioner Gordon's son, James, and whether or not he is or is not a murderer. And just Dick trying to help out and going through some imposter syndrome type stuff. It's a great story, I like it a lot. It's my favourite of him as Batman. There's a few good ones, but that's my favourite. Then you have, from the Rebirth run, The War of Jokes and Riddles. It's volume 4 of the Rebirth run, but you don't need context, it's a self-contained story. It's Batman talking to Catwoman about the time where he almost went too far and made a massive mistake. And that's the framing device for a story, which is Riddler and Joker have the supervillains teaming up on one side or the other. The Joker isn't laughing anymore, and the Riddler and, well, the framing is that Riddler thinks neither of them will ever be happy until one of them kills Batman, so if they're both alive, that's a problem. So they decide to attack each other. That's the framing device. That's not what the actual story is about. It's about something better than that. And this is, of course, also the more modern introduction of Kite Man. You know who he is. He is wonderful. And there's some interesting stuff in here. Batman ends up picking a side. Kite Man is wonderful. And the twist at the end is great. So also part of the New 52 run of Batman from a few years back. A 3-part volume on Batman Eternal. First part is huge, second part is pretty small, third part is relatively huge. Some of the side stories they include in this particular collection are not great. Stuff with Batwing, for instance. But the main story is fun. Commissioner Gordon apparently shoots an unarmed man, but then when Commissioner Gordon's asked about it, he says no, he had a gun. Look at the video footage, the man had no gun. So what's going on? It's a big conspiracy. There's a bunch of villains hiding under Arkham Asylum doing something, but at the end of the day, the person who's actually responsible might not be who you think it is, essentially. This is also like a newer introduction to some of the older, goofier heroes from the 80s. And villains as well, like Spoiler and Cluemaster and people like that. So it's a fun read. I wouldn't say this is especially fantastic, but it's a long 3-part story from beginning to end. It's satisfying enough, it's got some fun references, and all in all, it's okay. So the last suggestion I have for you is Huge. If you can find these original releases, they are all equally massive tomes. It is the Batman Nightfall trilogy, the infamous story in which Bane breaks Batman's back, Jean-Paul Valley becomes his successor, goes too far, gets too twisted, so Batman has to come back and take him down. Across a massive story that ran in the early 90s, 91 it started I think, 92, the proper introduction of Bane, not like just venomed out of his mind. He's cold and calculating, he studies his prey before taking them down, he wants to break Batman's mind before breaking his body. It is a huge read. The art style it's very 90s, you'll be able to see. So it might not be for everybody, but I'm not into the old style of art. Like, Long Halloween I can get around because it's very stylistic. This is just how comics looked in the 90s. It is not my preferred style. The story is good enough that it's still very readable, and again, it will last you so long. It is a huge read. One of the most infamous stories in Batman's history, and it's worth going after. So that's about going to do it as far as movies, TV shows, and some standout comics from Marvel and DC that I could suggest that primarily are just going to take you a long time to get through if you can find them and help distract you at this trying time. I'm going to quickly mention just a few video games at the end here because video games are my thing. If you've seen the main gaming channel, I do. Starting with, of course, the Batman Arkham games. Arkham Origins, Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, Arkham Knight. They are well worth playing. Some of them, like Asylum and City especially, are probably my top 10 favourite games ever. They are well worth checking out. You can get them dirt cheap digitally if you can't get a physical copy via Amazon or the like. In terms of other games, Tabletop Simulator is just worth throwing out there if you are missing playing games like Crisis Protocol, DC Universe, Marvel Universe. You could play the demo of Shadow of the Bat if it's still available. The Kickstarter had a campaign of 3 missions available to try for free. It's worth playing. It's basically how you can only play digital tabletop miniature games at the moment if you're self-isolating, etc., which again most of us are. If you're looking for a phone game, and I wouldn't normally recommend a phone game, but I've been playing it a lot, I think it's called Marvel Strike Force. It's free, but it's very, is the term gacha, I think. It's very encouraging you to spend lots of money. I have not spent, I did spend some money, because if I play anything for free on my phone, I throw them a little bit of money because it's the right thing to do. But other than throwing them £2.99, I have not spent a dime on it. It is grindy, but right now what we could all use is a distraction. Its graphics are fantastic for a phone game. It's just a turn-based battler, essentially, against the AI. There's story modes to go through. Most heroes and villains that you can think of are in, with more coming. So yeah, that gives my recommendation if you want a phone thing to distract you. The primary thing though is to stay safe at the moment, stay inside, quarantine, stay away from people until this whole thing is sorted. Yes, that might mean that you can't play any wargaming for a little while, but that doesn't mean you have to distance yourself from the hobby entirely, or you can use it as an excuse to get into reading comics, or watching a movie you missed, or a TV show you missed, rather than just sitting around worrying all day. So I hope this video was of some use. Again, I didn't show every single comic that I would ever recommend reading, because there's some smaller ones that are well worth reading. Some I didn't suggest just because of the context of them not really fitting a suitable distraction for times right now. And obviously some comics I just haven't read yet. I didn't even mention other ones like the Man Who Laughs, Batman Damned, etc. There's some other things I could have mentioned. I decided to just go with ones that were mostly on the long side. By all means, suggest your own reading, watching, gaming suggestions in the comments below for other suggestions for people to pass their time for what could be a long couple of months. Let's put it that way. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. Some suggestions. If you have anything to ask me, do so in the comments and I'll go down and answer them. Thank you for watching, and ta-ta for now.